We are going to have so much fun tonight. Thank you all for coming. You guys up there, let me hear it. Bad down here. All right, it's a party tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to hear some great folks. We ask you to please turn off your phones. Get ready. We're going to have a good old time. Thank you guys.
All right. I was ordering books from a book company, Marlboro Books, and I needed one more book so I wouldn't have to pay shipping. And there was the report on unidentified flying objects by Edward Ruppelt of the Air Force, marked down to $1, which was less than what the shipping would have been. So I ordered it. What the heck? This is back in the 50s, you understand, 1958. Yeah, I was grown up then. And I got the book, I read it, it intrigued me. I read 10 more books. Some of which weren't worth reading. And then I made a great discovery, the biggest study ever done on flying saucers for the Air Force. Project Blue Book, Special Report number 14. Covered 3,201 sightings. Had tables, graphs, charts. I was in data heaven. The guy who put it together included the Air Force press release, and they lied through their teeth, and that bothered me. I'll quote. On the basis of this study, we believe that no objects such as those popularly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. Well, I had the report. 3%? It was 21.5%. And the better the quality of the sighting, the more likely to be unidentifiable. Well, that stirred me up. I don't like being lied to. I had a security clearance for 14 years, and you have to be careful what you say sometimes. You can't talk about everything and so forth. There are limitations. But flat out lying. So for the last 60 years, I've been trying to find out the truth. What I found was that people are very interested in the subject, but they're fearful of ridicule. Apparently one of man's important concerns is, I don't want anybody to laugh at me, unless he's a comedian, you know. And what I have found is that the reality is, most people believe in flying saucers, but they think most other people don't, and they don't want to admit it because it makes them subject to ridicule, it says here in small print. But things have changed, George, and I'm glad I've been around long enough to see a couple of important changes. I mean, let me preface that by saying, look, I've spoken in all 50 states, 10 Canadian provinces, and 20 other countries. So I've had a pretty good opportunity to find out what people think about this subject. But one of the most important things that happened is our egos have taken a big kick in the butt. Because when Frank Drake talked about SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, way back in '61, he talked about there might be 8,000 planets out there that could be sending signals our way, and we should be listening. Well, new equipment, new satellites, new measurements. The latest estimate is that there are 1.6 planets per star in our galaxy. That doesn't sound like a lot, so you realize there's over 100 billion stars in the galaxy. That means that rather than there being 8,000 planets, there's over 100 billion planets in our galaxy. That changes the picture. Bishop Ussher said in 1650 that the world was created in 4004 BC. 6,000 years ago, no big deal. The latest number is that the universe is 13 billion years old. Are we the big shots we'd like to think we are? No. And so the other thing that's really changed is that the basic question, can you get here from there? How often have you heard somebody say, you can't get here from there? Take too long, take too much energy.
We're thinking of our propulsion system.
Yeah. And it turns out progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. The neutron wasn't even discovered until 1932. It's been here for billions of years. It gives us a different impression of how things are in the neighborhood. We didn't know that the process that produces the energy in our star, and in all the other stars, is nuclear fusion. We didn't know it existed until 1938. And so I was involved in the study of fusion for deep space travel in 1962. That's a long time ago. I was just a youngster, of course. Our understanding has changed. And for people out there who may wonder, can you get here from there? The difference that going to fusion makes is that in World War II, some of you may still remember this, a big bomb released the energy of 10 tons of dynamite. Blockbuster. That was in, say, 1944. First atom bomb, 15,000 tons of dynamite. First H-bomb, 10 million tons of dynamite. And the biggest one, the Russians set that one off, was 58 million tons of dynamite. That's an enormous change within one lifespan. So we've come around to the position where we recognize that there's a lot going on that we didn't know about before. And we need a little humility. You know, why don't they talk to us? Aren't we the big cheeses in the neighborhood? No, we're not.
You were one of the first people to investigate Roswell. They were in that incredible case, 1947, that you investigated.
I was the original civilian investigator. I stumbled across the case.
Fitting, we're in Ohio, where Wright Patterson is.
Yeah, not far. Roswell's kept me busy much of the last, well, since the 70s anyway. So, and in case people think other people aren't interested in UFOs, the International UFO Museum and Research Center in Roswell last year had 225,000 visitors. And Roswell's in the middle of nowhere. If anybody's gone out there, it's not on the way to anywhere. You know, if you're there, it's because you want to be there. When I'm there, and I will be there this July, one of my last lectures.
He says he's going to retire. No.
I plan to retire. I've earned my retirement, George. I'm 84 years old.
We need
That's
you.
even older than you, George. No, it's about time. And you have to know when to step down. I do want to write one more book.
Promise this to our audience, that you'll at least pop on Coast to Coast once in a while.
Why not?
When you found out about Roswell, weren't you on a Cleveland TV station or something like that, and the news director told you about these people?
No, it was in Louisiana. The guy the station manager said, the guy you ought to talk to is Jesse Marcel. Brilliant investigator that I am, I said, who's he? And he said, well, he handled wreckage of one of those saucers you're interested in when he was in the military. He was being serious, there was nobody around, he wasn't making jokes or anything. What do you know about him? He lives in Houma, Louisiana, which I never heard of Houma, Louisiana. He's a great guy, I ought to talk to him. Okay, things went well at my lecture at Louisiana State. And the next day, I called information in Houma, and I talked to Jesse Marcel, and he told me his story. He was the intelligence officer for the only atomic bombing group in the world. That meant he had to have something on the ball. I followed up on his story. Somebody had come in, a rancher had an explosion occur on his ranch, at least he heard a loud noise in the middle of the night. Next day he finds all kinds of wreckage out there, and he's concerned. And also when he's telling his buddies about this, they said, you know, there's a reward for one of these flying saucers people have been seeing. This is right after the beginning of the noise. He went into Roswell, talked to the sheriff, the rancher did. The sheriff sent him to the base, the only atomic bombing group in the world now. A guy you can trust, Jesse Marcel. his son also handled wreckage and so forth. But that's how it got started. And it took me a while to get organized, but we found over 60 witnesses within the first year.
It's one of the most incredible cases, and of course, because of your research, that sure helped a lot too. But I mean, a crashed, retrieved saucer with occupants.
Bodies, wreckage, crazy wreckage, strange symbols, etc.
Did you ever talk to the mortician?
Of course, Glenn Dennis.
Glenn Dennis. What did he tell you?
Well, he was a local mortician, and he got a call from the base asking, what's the smallest caskets you have? Can you get small caskets? And he said, I'll get back to you. And then he calls them and says, you can get them from this company someplace. And I did talk to Glenn eventually. I found him to be very reliable. I never caught him lying about anything. He was well thought of in the community. He was one of the first Roswell witnesses, if you will. There were so many more. It's funny because people had heard about flying saucers. There was plenty of press for a while. But the cover-up kept happening too. So to find individuals who had respectable, responsible positions, Jesse Marcel was certainly one of those. I mean, if you're the intelligence officer for the only atomic bombing group in the world, if you can't trust him, who can you trust? I mean, we're trusting him with atomic weapons. So Roswell intrigued the heck out of me, and I will admit that. And others have followed in my footsteps. Don Schmidt has followed. They've written books about this. And if you go to the museum in Roswell, you'll see lots of testimony and so forth. But Roswell was a singular event in the sense that it got the ball rolling on the whole question of, are we alone? Are we the big shots we'd like to think we are? And we're not. And we're not alone either.
Do you have any doubts that it happened?
No, I have no doubts at all. There's too much evidence from too many directions. And you know, I had a security clearance, two-clearance nuclear stuff for 14 years. The key concept is need to know. You don't get access to information. It isn't enough to have a clearance. You have to have a need to know for that information. I have run across other people. I have searched high and low everywhere I go. I have no doubt that Roswell occurred. There was also a crash. There were a couple in the plains of St. Augustine, which is not too far away, in New Mexico. And another one in Aztec, New Mexico. Excellent book of research about that. The case for the reality of alien flying saucers visiting the planet is extraordinarily strong. It's not just a story told by A to B to C and you talk to D and you get a crazy version of it. People say, well, why would they cover it up? Well, you know anybody on this planet who wants to admit that they don't speak for the planet? There's nobody who does. And the big thing about flying saucers, after all, is you want to figure out how they work so you can use them for military systems, right? And we spend a lot of money in that game, you know. And people tend to forget that. Well, why don't they tell us what's going on? Well, I don't want the Russians to know what's going on. There are a lot of good reasons, and I wish I had more of my books here, but I don't, but you can order them by mail.
You sold out.
I sold out what I had here, and you can go on the internet, www.stantonfriedman.com, and I autograph all the books I sent out. People order by mail and stuff. I'm there. You can find me easy.
I want to talk to you about a Barney and Betty Hill case that you also looked at.
Yes.
Now, this was an abduction case that is still one of the best ever. Let's take a look. It was an amazing case, Stan, as you know. Matter of fact, after I interviewed you back in 1971, I interviewed their psychiatrist, Dr. Benjamin Simon, out of Boston. And I asked him specifically, I said, Dr. Simon, were they lying in your opinion? And he said, absolutely not. He prefaced it. He said, I don't know what happened to them, but whatever happened to them, they believe it to be true.
Yeah, Dr. Simon actually did many investigations of people who had traumatic experiences and using hypnosis to get the truth. And the abduction wasn't part of the story at that time. It was a missing timings. They see this thing, it comes down, and
They blanked out.
yeah, they lost 2 hours, which is a scary concept in itself. I mean, what happened? I don't know what went on. you know, that
It's one of the best abduction cases out there today.
Well, it is, and there was a star map associated with this. Under hypnosis, Betty describes how she's talking to the leader of this crew, for want of a better phrase, and she asks him, "Where are you from?" And he shows her this, I'll call it a map. It's a complicated story, but later on, Dr. Simon asked Betty if she could remember what the map looked like. Gave her a post-hypnotic suggestion, please draw it later on if you can. She did, and a brilliant woman named Marjorie Fish from here in Ohio built a whole bunch of different models of our local galactic neighborhood and was able to come up to identify the stars in this map, which is a remarkable feat. And I got called into it because she was talking to the head of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. What scientists can I talk to that might help me out with this? And I was traveling right here in Ohio. She lived up near Toledo. And I went and talked to her. Eventually, Marjorie was able to identify all the stars in the map. And one of the things that we tend to forget, and that's very important in this story, is that we think stars are a long ways away, all of them, you know. But it turns out that some stars have other stars very much nearer to them than we do. We're out in the boonies. The base stars, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli, the constellation of Reticuli. Yeah, you can't see them from here. You got to go below the equator to see them. And they're only an eighth of a light year apart. Think about that. The nearest star to here from the sun is over 4 light years away. So those two stars are 30 times closer to each other than we are to the next door. Oh, we got next door neighbors. I mean, they have next door neighbors. We're out in the boondocks.
Way out.
Way out. The question isn't, are all UFO sightings of alien spacecraft? The question is, are any? And anytime you take a large group of cases, you find, yeah, 10 to 20%. So, yeah, they're still going on. There's plenty of new books out there, not just mine. But
do you have any of the new information of
one of the new things that are coming out right now has to do with the government admitting that they've been investigating UFOs. Tom DeLonge, former rock star, put together a group that has helped push this along a little quicker. And I would say, Stan, the latest revelation is not necessarily in specific UFO cases, but that the fact that the government is now admitting they are investigating, have investigated, and continue to investigate these UFO cases.
yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens now. Because remember that the important implication here is who's going to figure out how these things work and how are they going to use it in their military. Yes, the Space Force, we're talking about that. And I hope that while I'm still alive, the door opens more. We get a look at what else is inside the door.
Why aren't we having, because he kind of brings up something interesting. In the old days, we had these incredible UFO cases that everybody knows about today. You know, Bonnie Zamora, the police officer in Socorro, New Mexico, Roswell, and all these cases. Today, I can't remember a specific UFO case, a new one. Well, why not? They're still
Because
happening.
you haven't been exposed to them. The press hasn't done its job.
I mean, are they still happening? Are they landing? Are they
The
abducted?
Mutual UFO Network gets over 500 reports a month, George. A month. And more than 10% are unexplainable. So that's 50 unexplainable cases per month to MUFON. And there are other organizations around the world. I have to ask the press people, why don't you guys have UFO reporters? Somebody who checks on the data. It's there, but you got to look for it.
Thank you.
And my question is, how many people here believe that they have seen what I would consider to be a flying saucer? This is after my lecture now. Just raise your hand, and I'm not asking for names or anything. And when I do that, and then I point and count, typically it's 10% of the audience. So we got 1,000 people, that's 100 sightings. But then I ask, how many of you reported what you saw? 90% of the hands go down. So it doesn't take much effort other than to create the conditions so people don't expect to be laughed at. That's the kicker. To dig out sightings, we've got several hundred people here. I'll bet if we had somebody standing recording events, you'd find at least 10% of the people here believe they've seen one. Probably more because of the subject, and that's what brings them here, and all that sort of thing. But sightings are still going on all over the place, and I've talked to all kinds of professional groups. Engineering Society of Detroit was one of my early places. We had 1,008 people for dinner and a talk. They were surprised at the turnout. I was delighted. But you can find sightings if you look for them. And again, you got to ask the right question. Can we identify most of them? Yes, of course. So what? A great baseball player gets a hit a third of the time. You're saying he's lousy because 2/3 of the time he doesn't get it? You know, if you're looking for a new cure for cancer, you don't say, well, most of the things I looked at didn't work. Wait a minute. Tell me about the ones that did work. The ones that didn't don't matter. And it's the same with saucers. Ted Phillips in Missouri has collected thousands of physical trace cases. Cases where people see the saucer on or near the ground, and after at least one finds the equivalent of burn surface, burn rings, landing gear marks, physical evidence. Talk to pilots. You'll hear about a lot of sightings when they feel it's safe, so they need to worry about somebody giving them a hard time. And you can't use my name is a phrase I've heard many times when talking to people.
It happens a lot.
You don't have to look far to find good cases. You don't have to look far to find bad attacks on the good cases from people who say, don't bother me with the facts, my mind's made up. I get a little disgusted with those people. And I've been out there on the hustings, if you will, and I know that people are interested and wary, very wary of getting involved, losing their reputation in the community.
It happens with all, as you said, pilots and everybody else.
Small guys, well, I don't know if they were guys or gals. Nobody was.
They all look the same, man.
They're coming here from someplace else. They obviously have a purpose in coming here. Maybe their PhD thesis for Zeta Reticuli, who knows? But you need beings to interpret the data to avoid the local bad guys who are trying to shoot you down. This happens, crime, and all that sort of thing. To say, why don't they use unmanned, unalien, is there such a word as that? I think they needed to be able to decide what to do in the situation if somebody comes attacking them. And if you talk to enough pilots, you'll hear about it. Pilots attacking UFOs, doing what they're supposed to do to defend the country and all this kind of stuff. There's no substitute for an intelligent being, alien or earthling. And we have some intelligent beings here.
We have a few.
Can you tell us some of the things that they did to Barney Hill under examination?
You really want to know that?
And how it affected him?
They prodded and probes and everything, didn't they?
Yeah. Barney was a specimen, no more, no less. They checked him out, if you will. Say that he was disturbed at the incident. He felt terribly threatened. Not surprising under the circumstances. I mean, you get kidnapped, you get picked up, examined, and tossed back. But you don't know until the end whether you're going to get tossed back. You're going to survive. Barney had a gun in the car. Do I need to tell you that in 1961, a black man married to a white woman out in the boondocks isn't going to worry about the circumstances? I don't need to tell you that. He's going to worry about the circumstances. Barney was a very special guy. I was very fortunate in that KDKA in Pittsburgh, because I'd been on their shows, I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, told me about things that happened. They were bringing Betty and Barney in to appear on a program in Pittsburgh. And they told me where they were staying. So I called, that's very unusual, George, I think you agree.
Yes, we do not tell people.
Yeah, but they trusted me, they'd had me on several times. I called them, met with them for dinner, and it gave me a chance to evaluate them, in the sense that I believe what they were saying. And I was very favorably impressed. I was looking for reasons to say that they weren't telling the truth, because it's kind of an extraordinary story. Barney died not too long thereafter.
Yeah, the case was in 61. And
Yeah.
He didn't last much.
He had
But I
some
didn't know
medical
about this
problems
until
as a
later.
result of the examinations, right?
He might have. and find out.
I don't know what may have gone on inside his head as to, you know, how he felt about that and all the rest of that, but I was very impressed with them because I found no inconsistencies, nothing that wasn't in the book. And as a matter of fact, Kathleen Martin, Betty's niece, and I did a book captured the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience. It's still available. We try to go into as much detail as anybody has about the case. And remember, Kathleen is Betty's niece, so this is an insider view. And Kathleen spent a lot of time trying to see if there was any facts she could get that would make this case seem not very likely.
Folks, let's hear it for Stanton Friedman.